Let's look at admin controls for hardening our hosts. Okay, very important. We need to think about having a standard operating environment. It's going to be a lot easier in our enterprise if we can standardize our operating systems and not just saying we're going to use this particular Linux build, or we're going to use Microsoft, or we're going to use Mac or whatever, but trying to standardize on the version. By having multiple operating systems and platforms for hosts, end users, and not having good versioning control and upgrade control, which falls into change and configuration management, it's going to make your ability to secure that environment much more difficult. So early on, we want to do some configuration baselining. And this can tie into building your images that you roll out for your machines, for your client machines, your laptops, your workstations, your mobile devices. So having an initial baseline, and then from that point on, keeping control over the different versions and service packs is a critically important thing. And as a matter of fact, if you go to CIS and you take a look at their 20 controls, they give you the top five. In the top five, they claim that could pretty much solve about 85% of your problems. Well, in the top five, one of those things is patch management. And if you talk to most security professionals and most security practitioners, they will tell you that one of the best ways to, fill that gap between the vulnerabilities you have and the outbreaks and the data loss and data leakage and the problems you have from a security standpoint is making sure that all of your systems are patched. And Symantec has done studies, Trend has done studies, and they found out that a lot of the end systems that they are 30 days and longer behind on having patches updated. Some of them are months behind. And it's one of the critical things we have to stay on top of. So we have options. We can rely on manual patch management, but it's much better to use automated and scripted solutions to make sure that our devices are up to date. And we can also tie into that using Cisco's NAC systems or Microsoft's NAP systems or other enterprise third-party systems for making sure that we have quarantine and remediation and patch management. We can also think about restricting the use of the command shell on endpoints. That can be done with scripts. It can also be done, as we'll see here in a moment, using a group policy mechanism. We also want to consider using our layer 2 and layer 3 devices to do application whitelisting and blacklisting. And we can rely upon, obviously, third parties like a web security appliance, an email security appliance, or a hybrid cloud solution, maybe in a SaaS environment, and we can use our cloud access security broker to help whitelist our SaaS application traffic, for example, with Microsoft Office 365 or Salesforce or Workday or Yammer or whatever you're using. And then, of course, in a Microsoft environment or some other type of e-directory environment, use a policy-based approach for your change and configuration management. So for example, here we can see some host hardening that we might want to do is to go into the services on the workstations and the servers and make sure we go into that services area. And this can be done through scripting, okay? This can be done through a group policy, but we're just seeing here where we're going through manually and we're taking certain services and we're removing the automatic startup to either making them a manual startup or we're just disabling them altogether. So one of the key things to harden your host is to make sure that they're not running services that they don't need, they're not using ports they don't need, because that's going to open them up to various vulnerabilities. We can also, in a Microsoft environment, we can also use group policy. So we go in as a domain admin or an enterprise admin, and we define the policy for our domain using a group policy editor tool. And this can go down to the machine level, it can go down to the application level, down to the user level, and these elements in this policy can then be downloaded to that particular machine, and then it can be enforced by the operating system when either the machine comes onto the Active Directory and or when the user logs on. And that system policy can control basically everything that that machine and that user can do in that environment. Here we see another example of where we can use a group policy object. For example, for a standard user, we want to enable a group policy setting that says we're going to prevent access to the command prompt on your system. We're also going to prevent access to using registry editing tools. So those are two key vulnerabilities there. However, we can use the same type of mechanism and have a group policy object applied to administrators where we're going to disable the setting that prevents using the command prompt and disable the setting that uses registry editing tools. So again, in your enterprise networking solution, for example, Microsoft Active Directory, your Server 2012 solution, for example, we can rely on group policy. And again, this is implementing security at a higher layer of the OSI model, but for defense in depth, we want to be able to provide security here at a higher layer, at the application layer, but also defense in depth at layer 2 and layer 3 and physical security. Okay, we need to have that layered security and defense in depth to be truly effective. Some other controls that we can apply to harden our host is we can use access control lists and access control rules on layer 3 devices like firewalls and security routers, firewall rules. We also can protect our devices by doing out-of-band management. So in other words, we're not going to manage our devices, our infrastructure devices necessarily, by using an in-band solution. We'll use an out-of-band access server. In other words, we're not on the corporate network. We're not sending our management traffic through the same switches that our production traffic goes through. And out-of-band management at any level is always preferable over in-band management. If you're going to do in-band or production level traffic, you might want to consider protecting that management traffic with Secure Shell version 2 or HTTPS or TLS version 1.2, okay? We also want to realize that we can have data interfaces on routers and multi-layer switches that can be converted to management-only interfaces. That can help. And again, as I mentioned, Secure Shell 2 and TLS, we can also use secure management protocols. We can also leverage, by the way, IPsec authentication header in IPv4 and IPv6, just to give us integrity in origin authentication between front-end and back-end servers or between devices, as well as .1AE, okay, MACsec, we can actually take our frames from the endpoint to the switch and from switch to switch, and we can use AES 256 and GMAC to get confidentiality, integrity, in origin authentication on the frames from the endpoint to the switch or from the switch to switch. So we have a lot of controls that we can use to harden our host and harden our environments. Here we see another diagram from the Center for Internet Security, just reminding us of the importance, obviously on the upper left-hand corner, always the common denominator here is getting your alerts and your alarms and your reporting with some type of analytics system where you're not depending upon just an individual sitting there at a monitoring station having to make manual decisions. We want to use some advanced analysis, okay, some advanced SIEM tools. So that cloud over there with the analytic systems and possibly being a hybrid or a public cloud solution and some of the many vendors that are out there to help us, that's a common denominator that the CIS has in their 20 controls. But you can see part of this solution is having an asset inventory database, making sure that we are assessing all of our virtualization. So we don't want any endpoints, any workstations or laptops running any rogue virtualization systems. This can be enforced on your VPN users as well. For example, with the Cisco AnyConnect mobility client, I have the capability to make sure that that VPN user is not running Oracle VirtualBox or VMware Player or VMware Workstation in an unauthorized way on that endpoint. So in addition to software whitelisting, we want to make sure that we not only have inventory of our software and applications, but make sure that we're enforcing whether our endpoints can even run those virtual environments or not, okay? Very important. Also, we can use SCAP configuration scanning tools. So SCAP is the Security Content Automation Protocol. And it's basically a collection of interoperable specifications that come from a community, the SCAP community. For example, SCAP has the ability to audit and assess a target system to see if it's compliant with a defined set of configuration requirements. So for example, it'll use the target system's logon privileges. This is a huge benefit because it's a huge kind of cloud community, and a lot of different organizations use SCAP assessment tools and SCAP analysis tools. So it kind of raises all the boats kind of raise up with the improvement of these SCAP tools, and many different security activities and security disciplines benefit from this kind of standardized way to express and report. So it's an excellent tool for remediation, accreditation, and compliance. So we can see in this diagram, in addition to using SCAP scanning, we also have our configuration enforcement systems. We have baseline images, we have file integrity assessment. And file integrity monitoring is also another key aspect of security. We can use third-party monitors for our endpoints and for our users, for the files on their systems. We can use the cloud-based solution. We can even use your firewall, okay? The Palo Alto next generation firewall also has the ability to do excellent file assessment. And again, along with our SCAP vulnerability scanner, we have to have patch management, okay? We can't reinforce that concept enough, the importance of having solid patch management on all of your endpoints in your enterprise.